Hello, everyone. Welcome to an exciting episode of The Energy That Surrounds Us. We have not played our intro yet, as we have a wonderful guest coming on, and we are hoping that we can overcome the technical issues and that he will come on as soon as he is ready. Our guest is Robert Lindsy Milne. And I will turn it over to Michelle to tell you a little bit about our guest.
All right. Wasn't expecting that. I did take some notes earlier. Um, he's just a really cool dude. He's been doing this for over 59 years, and he's done over 100,000 readings. This was at the time that I watched his or listened to his podcast. He's got some pretty neat stories that I plan on asking him about when he gets in here. And yeah, back to you, Michael.
So while we're waiting for him to come on, I think that, you know what? Let's start the show officially, and why not play the intro?
Okay, sounds good.
And of course, now my mouse jumped, and now I gotta go find the intro. Here it is. All right, everyone, here we go. And officially welcome to another exciting episode of The Energy That Surrounds Us. As you noticed, we are starting a little bit late, and we are hopeful that Robert will be able to come on to the program. The guest that we had slated for tonight, we were hoping to be able to talk to us about is not only because he's a psychic intuitive counselor, but a teacher, a healer, and a life coach. And he has done, as Michelle pointed out, many readings and has a very interesting bio with stuff that he's done, and he's also the host of a podcast show, My Side of the Crystal Ball. And so he's also credited as being quoted 24 times in the book The Perfect Predator. So we will bring him in as soon as we can. And in the meantime, I graciously hope that you all will be all right if we just spend a little bit of time, with it being the month of November, talking about what we're up to as your hosts and anything we got coming up and what we're grateful for this month. And so, since Michelle's our lovely guest host, co-host, I'm going to let her start.
Okay. You want me to start with what I got going on this month?
Whatever you want to share.
Okay.
Hi, Nicole.
Well, I just got back from an investigation in Austin, which was really neat. I was linked in for a long time on 4 spirits at a house, from like 2 p.m. until almost 10 o'clock. And I'd been doing some audio writing too, so that was really tiring. But I was grateful to be there and absolutely loved the team I worked with. It was really, really good. We can share it. But there we go. Yeah, much better. And what are you up to this month?
This month I have tonight's podcast show. Tomorrow is episode, well, technically, I think it's episode 8 of Riding Through the Unknown series. And then on the 9th, I have on Paranormal Versus, we're going to be talking with Lala Bright, which I'm looking forward to. And then we are back the following week with Peter Robbins.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have basically a few shows, and on November 17th, I will be interviewed by Greg Koss on his show. So looking forward to that. And yeah, outside of that, I have a few volunteer sessions coming up to where I'll be at a performing arts center, taking some breaks from the paranormal.
Oh yeah. What are you gonna be doing there?
I think I'm signed up to do either some concerts or some Nutcracker shows.
Oh, to work?
Yep, I'll be ushering or taking tickets. So come check it out at the Eisman Center. It's a really cool place in Richardson. It's a fun building. And if you're lucky, you'll catch me there because I'm there 3 times this month.
Listen to you. You're like, forget about what you bought tickets for. If you're lucky, you'll see me there. So don't even watch the show. Just look around the perimeters for me.
You've been spotted and people approach you.
Yeah, I get that sometimes.
So, some people might actually want to come and check it out and
of course
say hi.
Russian, was it the Moscow Nutcracker? Is that the name of it? Can't remember right. The famous one, the Russian or whatever it is. I saw them in Dallas a couple years ago.
Well, they're all called the Nutcracker, basically, but
it's the troupe. Which troupe is
Russian ballet? The one I'm going to is Chamberlain.
Okay. Yeah, I went to the big famous one that was in Dallas, I think pre-COVID, definitely pre-COVID. I saw everything pre-COVID. I saw Hamilton in Times Square. I got to see the Phantom of the Opera at the Kennedy Center. I've seen Cinderella here, Bass Hall. I love Bass Hall. Have you been there yet?
I have been to Bass Hall a couple of times, but not lately.
I haven't been since COVID. I absolutely love Bass Hall. Beautiful. And the valet is pretty good too. It's hard to walk hills from that parking garage all the way to the front. It's pretty good. What else we gotta do? November. Oh, I'm gonna be on Happy Hour Paranormal or Paranormal Happy Hour. I can't remember how Suzette does it pretty soon. And yeah, so hi Nicole, I just saw that. So yeah, just mess around. Grandkids tomorrow. Pretty excited about that. First time to take the I think 7 and 6-year-old to Dinosaur World in Glenrose. So
Wait, and Glenrose, you mean Dinosaur Valley?
no, Dinosaur World. There's a big old place there that has gigantic ones, like 200 gigantic ones that you can walk through.
Really?
Yes, it's very cool. They've got a gigantic gift shop in there, and there's dinosaurs you can stick your head through. And then there's I think the koi pond is probably still there. Big koi pond with like gigantic kois, and it's awesome.
Ah, so they have animatronic dinos there now?
They don't move. They're just like statues, like big, lifelike statues. And you
Is it a
walk
part
around.
of is it a part of the Dinosaur Valley, or is it a whole different?
Totally different thing. Same thing. It's like right before the museum for evolution, and then it's the valley, Dinosaur Valley. So it's kind of the first thing when you turn going toward Dinosaur Valley.
Okay.
But I was just at Dinosaur Valley maybe a month ago or whatever. They had where you could walk through and they would show you edible plants on the path, like you can eat juniper berries but not too many, and that you can eat the root on a briar bush, like the vines, the ones that if they scratch you they burn real bad. You can like eat the root. They said the root's like really, really deep, but you can eat it. And they said it's kind of like a potato. But that was a really neat thing. It was still so hot. I wanted to just but I got to go down and see where they were getting up all the new dinosaur marks and feet and stuff like that from the drought. So that was pretty cool.
That is pretty cool.
Yeah.
So, with it being November, I can say I am grateful that I got to go to Texas Scaregrounds and help out 3 days, volunteer acting. I got to do scares for 2 of the 3 days, so that was a lot of fun. And I got some people so well that it was like really kind of funny to watch, and it was kind of, in a way, I was feeling so proud that I was able to actually, like, one guy, there was a group of 3 guys. I scared him so bad he dropped to his knees and sat on his butt and nearly took a friend down with him. And I was like, wow, I actually got him that well. And it was like, it's kind of a euphoric feeling of
to scare someone.
Not to scare them, but to see their reaction and the fun of them, watching them being like, and then getting up and laughing about it and being like, dude, really?
Well, that's cool. I'll never understand the scare thing. Like, I don't understand. Is it just the adrenaline that people feel that they love? Like that burst of, what is it? Is it serotonin or whatever you get when you're scared? What is that? Dopamine? No.
I don't think it's serotonin, but for me, it's just being around friends and it's experiencing something new. And, people have always said, like, because I walk around so quietly during investigations, that I scare them, and I don't intend to. So it's interesting to see how when I intend to scare versus trying not to scare, and how a lot of people, I would position myself next to a mannequin, and
Right.
she was in a wedding dress, and I was in a room we call the chapel, and so I was in costume, and I would stand next to the mannequin, holding the mannequin's hand, making it look, and I would be so still that people would walk by, and I could hear them saying, "Is he real or is he not real?"
Oh, wow. You could
And
still.
it was just amazing. And then people would go, "No, he's real." And then they'd walk by, and then I'd start to follow him, and they'd scream out, "Oh my God, he really is real." And so it was cool to, be able to see that, yeah, I can be so still that people will think I'm a mannequin.
Wow. It's pretty still. Absolutely. Well, I'm glad you got that experience.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
And I got to go to my first crew party after 3 years of doing it.
Oh, that's good.
Last Saturday was so much fun hanging out with everyone and just watching videos of us in costumes and just having fun.
Cool. I'm glad you got to go to that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're going to be hanging out in Austin now to investigate.
I'm hoping to. I got invited back. Kind of a funny thing how that happened. I had been getting a tattoo outside of Austin with some friends of ours who's a tattoo artist. And just readings started coming through. And yeah, so that was years and years ago, like 3-4 years ago. No, longer than that, 4 or 5 years ago. And then I put something up about I had lost that little piece of paper with the podcast things on it. And I'd put something on my Facebook about, hey, if I'm supposed to be on there, let me know, because I can't find that piece of paper. And he got on there and said, I sent you something on PM. And I looked back, and it was for months and months prior to that. So I got a hold of them, and they just wanted to hear the story of what happened at the shop. And then it just turned into a whole nother thing. He was like, I would love to bring you out to this other place. And I was started, remote writing. It was drawing the house. I was drawing all kinds of stuff. And I had just linked into the place that we did the investigation this last weekend. And it was just crazy how things were coming through. I was getting messages from the spirit before I even went to the house. So it was pretty insane. But great time. Really, really well organized group. Everybody has departments, but yet everybody works together. And it was just, man, it was so smooth. Absolutely. I have had some unusual experience of some groups, but that one was really, really good. And I'll release all that information when we get closer to time. It'll take months before all that. I mean, so much stuff to go through, but it was good. I was excited. And they were gracious enough to host me, which was nice.
All right. So any big plans for Thanksgiving?
No, I'm not really doing anything on Thanksgiving. Wish my mom a happy birthday, but we do our Christmas and Thanksgiving together in December, so everybody doesn't have to try to get away twice. And yeah, maybe I'll go to PA for Thanksgiving. I don't know. Depends on what Barry's up to. So we'll see. I've talked to a paranormal group up there about working with them a little bit when I'm in PA. I'm going to make sure no matter where we go, I'm doing something. And then we'll be in London in April, hopefully. If the actors are on strike now. Anyway, when that's over, then hopefully get to bop around London a little bit.
Oh, what's in London?
That's where he's got my boyfriend's an actor.
Oh.
He's got a show he's doing there. So he'll be taping and I'll get to bop around. I think Jen's going to come over and run around with me a little bit. So excited about that. But really looking forward to it.
So any big things in December coming up?
I think I'm on Andy Dakotas' in December. Yeah, I'm going to be on Andy Dakotas' show on the 15th.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah, I'm excited about it. I was supposed to be on there forever ago, and then, I think Daddy died. Wow, that's been a while. It's been almost 2 years. So I'm a little behind being on Andy's show. But when Dad died, I didn't do anything. I had just bought the shell on the house, and I flopped right in the middle of my 4 million degree house that was just a shell at the time, and told the spirits to just leave me alone, that they understood grief, just leave me alone. They're not welcome in this house. And I've had good luck. I've had mediums and things come in this house. They're like, it's totally dead in here. Like there's nothing. I'm like, yeah. Every once in a while they'll come in here and I'm like, out of my house. This is my sanctuary. And it seems to be good. If they're here, they're quiet. And that's all I care about. Just shh.
Yeah.
I don't want all that constant. So
yeah. Well, that's cool. So in December, I'll be running the shows as normal.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll be doing an end of the year episode. And I'm not sure if I'm going to do that as during an episode, or if I'm going to do a little special something on the side for that. But it is kind of little heartfelt that we're in November.
Yes.
Which means there's only 2 more months left of the year, and then this first season of the show will be over.
That's crazy.
And we'll be looking at what's season 2 is gonna be looking like. And I'll be sharing some of that in December of what some of season 2 may look like. And in December, I do have a special something coming up that learning from my great friend Andy. You're just going to have to wait and see in December what it is. I can't talk about it right now, but trust me, you're going to be surprised to learn what's coming for December. And it is something that's truly a first for myself and any of my shows. So I'm excited to tease that a little bit. And
Which show are you going to do it on? This show or the other shows? Which ones are you going to have the surprise on?
Oh, it's for this show.
Because I don't even know about it. This is the first I've even heard about it.
I know. I just started working on it and putting it together. And so, yeah, nobody knows about this.
For everybody.
So I got to have some surprises to keep everybody
on
in
their
tune.
Toes. Yeah. Well, I guess we'll see.
Trust me, it's really cool.
Yeah.
And I have a couple other things in the works for season 2 of this show.
Do we get clues?
Well, one is I might be branching the show a little bit out of the paranormal world. and be having maybe a couple of guests who are not your normal paranormal type guests
Okay.
to talk about some stuff. And so these are people that I've met, and I got to work out the details on how to get them on the show. So that'll most likely, if it happens, will be in the spring.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be launching those. And
Well, how can they be out of the paranormal world when we consider everything to be in the paranormal world?
because what they do is technically in part of the field, but they're not paranormal investigators. In other words, their not main focus isn't paranormal.
See, I kind of feel like half of our guests are that way anyway.
But with that being said, our guest has arrived.
Yay. Hi.
Oh, this has been a really intense hour for me. I don't quite know what happened, but I'm here. Finally.
We're so glad.
Me too.
We've been looking forward to it, and just so you know, you're not the first guest that's had this. I've had a few guests that we've had to delay starting because of technical issues, and so don't feel bad about it. It's not you. It's just somehow it happened.
Michael. It's Michael's fault.
Right. Well, I'm here now. I'm afraid to press any other buttons, so I'm just gonna stay right here. I'm gonna be looking at me and the two of you on the side here. So so here I am.
So as we mentioned before, Michelle pointed out that our guest with us is Robert Lindsy Milne, who she gave your accolades of over 100 investigations or
100,000
readings,
100,000
readings.
Yeah. And
which, wow.
This coming January 2024, I will celebrate 59 years of being a professional psychic. And it's what I've done for my career, my living, since I was 15 and a half years old. Full-time, by the way.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm in awe.
What was the tea room? You mentioned I caught some of your July 30th with everything imaginable. What kind of tea room was it that you worked in?
Well, in those days, the tea room, it was called the Cozy Tea Room, and they sold sandwiches, cups of tea, and people got their tea leaf and cards read. But in those days in Canada, it was against the law to do psychic readings. You would get busted. So the tea rooms would sell sandwiches and a cup of tea, for a fairly large amount of money, and then they got a reading from it. That's what the Cozy Tea Room was.
Oh, that's cool. So that allowed you to kind of hone in on the things that you kind of already suspected that you could do.
That's correct. Now, at the time, I said I was 15 and a half. I was actually homeless. And the way I got off the streets or survived on the streets was using my psychic ability and my intuition. And then I heard about the tea room. And up until that time, I knew what I was doing. And at a very young age, like 5 or 6 years old, I was sensing and seeing and things and telling my family about stuff that I'd get into trouble for. And then it almost always worked out afterwards, though.
So I did not get to watch your stuff until this evening. I've just been so busy. I had an investigation this last weekend. And but I absolutely love the fact that you're not all about the names of what we can do, because I've never had to do that.
Well, do you know what? I do, and we'll be teaching another psychic class. And my concept is, if you want to be psychic, become aware of what's obvious.
Right.
And when you become aware of what's obvious, then more becomes obvious.
Exactly.
And then when you become more aware of what's obvious, then more becomes obvious. And then you get to a point
Yeah.
that's what's obvious to you, it's not obvious to other people.
You're the first one to explain it that way, that it actually makes sense. I have watched so many things, it's a blur, and everyone's always about, well, can you do this and can you do this? Oh, well, you fall into this category, you fall into this category. And It was so good to hear you say that. You said, I just did what needed to be done.
Yes. Well,
I love that.
Where I got that concept was, I was I was the first Canadian psychic to appear on call-in shows in the Toronto area, and then I became the first Canadian psychic that toured across Canada, and then I became the first Canadian psychic to travel around the world doing shows. And I've always been focused on solving the problem in the best way I can.
Absolutely.
And I'm sorry. Do I keep cutting you off, Michelle? Sorry.
No, sorry. I think I cut you off. I'm so excited.
So there was one time, there's this little city west of Toronto called London, Ontario. It's in the snow belt. And I had been there, I'd done a bunch of shows, and then I was working from the Holiday Inn. And this would be in the mid 1970s. And this man came to me for a reading, and he would have been my age now. I'm 74. He was probably about my age now. I was, mid 20s. And just before I started doing his reading, I asked him, so what did you do for your living, your job, when you worked? And the guy said that he was a court stenographer. And I said, wow, that'd be interesting. How many words a minute can you write? And the guy said, I don't know. And I said, well, how can you not know how many words a minute you can write? And he said, because I write down what the people say. Think about that. I don't worry about how many. I just do what needs to be done.
I love it. I absolutely love it. I mean, because it's so crazy how when you're, especially like me, I've always had abilities, but developing late, to then have to hear people say, well, what can you do? Like you're a trick pony or something. Sure. Well, I don't know what I can do. It's just when I'm in a situation that things come through, I have to carry it around. So when you say that, it's so good, and I think it can help some people by not worrying about it. Just don't worry about it. Just do what you do.
And my focus is simply answering the question or solving the problem that's in front of me. And I don't care how I solve it. It's irrelevant.
Yes,
get the answer. And it doesn't matter how you do it. You get points in my job. Mathematicians get points for knowing how they get the answer.
Right.
Psychics get points for knowing the answer.
Exactly.
And it doesn't matter the way we get there. And most labels that we use are a distraction and a limitation. Right. to what teaching somebody to be clairvoyant. Well, just teach somebody to look at another person and feel their energy. Let's do that. Absolutely. Rather than call it something. Just do it.
Now, when you're marketing yourself, yes, and you don't like the titles because they're hard to do and they don't make sense, and what does it matter anyway? How do you still manage to market your ability?
By being one hell of a good psychic and putting on a good show.
Right.
And that's the way I do it.
So you just You just get to a point where you're so good. They don't care your titles. They just want you there.
I've never had titles anyway.
That's amazing. I find that hard. I find that I give you so much just gratitude and kudos for figuring that out, because right now I can't seem to do much of anything without someone wanting a specific title. So it's really hard. I'm still
well, Michelle. So let's have a talk about that. I'll be glad to talk with you about that, and maybe I can help a bit. Because you have been around a bit. Myself.
Yeah, just a few years.
Now, I don't hang out with very many psychics. I don't know very many.
Right.
By the way, I'm not a competitive person. I'm competitive with myself, but I'm not competitive with others. So I don't much care what other people do. I mostly, pay attention to what I do. So, and I've always worked, for the most part, independently.
Right.
And I've always toured with a secretary or two, but I've always toured on my own. I've always done shows on my own. I've always done it my way.
Now, you said in that interview also that you have you were talking about how good a reading was. And I think it was when you were talking about maybe the blood drops that y'all had studied in that Toronto Research Center.
Oh, yes, that was yes. There was a place called the Toronto Institute of the Toronto Psychic Society of Toronto. I think that's what it was called, or it'll come back to me in a minute. Now, we're talking again in the 1970s, and
79 to 79, I think, somewhere
or
around.
something like that. And I was no, it was even earlier than that.
Oh.
I was around 20, 21, 22, and the institute or the Toronto Society of for Psychical Research, that's what it was. It was sponsored by a Canadian financier, a billionaire, and he hired a mathematician, Dr. George Owen, from Oxford University, and Mrs. Owen, and they came to Toronto and lived in this kind of mansion in Toronto and ran the organization, the society there. And I used to do certain experiments, and one time, and the people that went there were, kind of high end and really super educated, and they were doctors and lawyers and some scientists and things like that, and academics. And the vice president, he was in his day job was a doctor that helped birth babies.
Right.
Anyway, he brought a pile of blood spots on a blotter paper, and these were blood spots from his patients, and they handed one each, a blood spot to me. I held it in my hand, and if you want a name for that, call it psychometry. And I would hold the blood spot in my hand, and I would talk about the patient. I talked about what it was like, and I did all those. And I think there was about 10 or 12 that I did. And people were all fascinated, and then the doctor then read from the notes that about the people that I'd been doing the psychic readings for, and the academics got into an argument, a debate about what was Robert really doing. Was Robert being clairvoyant? Was Robert being intuitive? Was Robert only being telepathic? Mm-hmm. And I was listening to these people talk like that, like, was Robert only being? Yeah. And I grabbed one of the ink spots, and I ran over to this guy and said, "You be only."
Right.
Yeah. Oh, you be clairsentient. Let's see you do it. And
Right.
that was the end of the conversation. And then I wouldn't do it anymore because people kept trying to label it rather than do it.
Yeah. I totally get it. And you said that you had a certain criteria without, without having to divulge your criteria. But how do you tell between doing it just like it becomes such a normal everyday thing, like getting groceries or whatever? You get readings off of people all the time. How do you know how to stop doing everything for free and start saying, this is I'm getting enough information worth charging for? Or, you know, how do you find that moment? Because I'm myself and a few other people I know, we're still at the point where we're like, we just do it like it's normal. But we don't make a living off of it. We don't.
Sorry to hear that.
They did.
I'm really sorry to hear that. Well, okay, so I was 15 and a half years old. I was living on the streets in Toronto and surviving by my intuitive and psychic ability
Right.
on the streets. So in that time period, I never stole anything. I never robbed anybody. I never beat anybody up. I used my intuition and instincts to find a place where I could get something to eat, or where I could, wash dishes for something, or sweep floors. And somebody told me that if you worked at the cozy tea room,
Mm-hmm.
if you worked in the afternoon, you would get a cup of tea, a sandwich, and some cookies, and you would get paid for the readings that you do. And if you worked in the evening, you would get a hot dinner. Wow.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, believe me, a cup of tea, cookies, and again, you would get paid. And on January 17th, 1965, I applied at the Cozy Tea Room. I called the woman up, told her that I could do readings. Now, this was a big place. Like, there were 7, 8, 9 readers there all the time. And I applied, I called her, told her what I could do. And then, and by the way, I couldn't do tea leaf readings or card readings. But I told her that I could do readings.
Uh-huh.
And the way I got the job was I did a reading for her.
Oh, wow.
And she liked it. And that was the day I started doing readings. And that day I worked in the afternoon shift and I worked in the evening shift. And that day I had a warm place to sleep at. And I had, a lunch and a dinner. And the next day I had a job to come to.
Right.
And I worked at the Cozy Tea Room 5 days a week, sometimes 6 days a week, and even sometimes 7 days a week. And in those days, those early days, I would see sometimes 30, 40 people in one day. And then on another day, they're not hour readings, right? They were, 10-minute readings. But I learned how to do one reading after the other, after the other, after the other. And I practiced. If I wasn't working, if I didn't go to work and work at the tea room, I would practice doing psychic readings.
Right.
And I was in a place where people came to get readings and they knew they were going to pay for it. That was what they did.
Right.
I've never had a problem getting paid. When I left the tea room, I just assumed that I was still going to continue doing readings, only I would get all the money for it instead of sharing it with the tea room. That's just the way it was. I assumed.
Right. So that was, you just had that way.
Good,
and you had the tea room to start it all. So that was handy. So where we don't have that in I wish, man, that would be so cool.
I can help you with that. I'll be glad to, well, I'll be glad to talk with you about that.
Thank you. I sure would appreciate that.
Oh,
And
I really
how-
love to share my experience.
thank you. You're so good at it. I love your stories. Like earlier, I didn't want to go backstage because I was still listening to the podcast, and I told Michael, I was, man, I'm so excited. I have a problem being overzealous when I get excited about learning these things that I don't know, and the fact that listening to your stuff puts zero pressure on me. Like listening to a lot of the other things that I would listen to, there's so much pressure about figuring out exactly what you can do when I don't even think that most of the things have a name. They just do. They blend, they merge, they accommodate whatever situation you're in. It's not just this or this or this. It's a little bit of this and a little bit of that and a little bit of this.
Yes.
So.
Well, when we start being analytical about what we're doing, it uses a different part of our brain. Our analytical brain is the upper brain,
Right.
and where our intuition and psychic awareness, and it comes from another part, the middle brain, and that's where our intuition and psychic ability comes. And we don't think logically, we think conceptually. And when you, as soon as you start to become analytical, you're not being psychic anymore. You're not doing a psychic reading anymore. You're doing something different.
That makes complete sense because it's almost like everything gets fuzzy when I'm having to think out like within the box instead of out of the box. It's like it kind of blocks everything. So that makes sense that it would be coming from different parts of your brain.
It's so. Incidentally, I well, I've never met anybody that does what I'm going to just say now, but I guarantee my work absolutely forever. So if I did a reading for you 25 years ago, and you come up to me today and you say, Robert, you did a reading for me 25 years ago, and after all these years, that reading sucked. What I simply do is say, I am so sorry, and I just give them back their money.
Wow.
And that goes from the time I complete their reading until the ending of my life or theirs. I guarantee that they will believe and feel that the service I gave them was of value, helped them, and was a good service. If not, I'll give you back your money. And I've done it more than I like to do it, and but I do. Now, if I did a reading for you in 1983, and this is 2023, you're not getting today's back, right? You're getting that money that you get your principal. You don't get interest,
right? That's so funny.
Yeah.
Oh man.
However, I've never met anybody that does that.
Yeah. How did you deal with it? Did you ever have a thing where you didn't have confirmation immediately that something was right? Or are you just doing less paranormal and more just intuitive, that kind of stuff? To where you're like giving a reading to a person instead of like doing in a paranormal investigation where you're dealing with spirits that are telling you their story.
I don't do that. I don't. I'm just a plain ordinary boring psychic, and
I don't think it's boring. I think it's
and I just simply do what needs to be done. I did undercover work with the RCMP security service. I had direct contact with a KGB agent, and I also found dead letter boxes where intelligence was passed. I also later on, I feel like I'm bragging. Then a few years ago, clients of mine came down with caught the most potent superbug on the planet.
Oh man.
When you got that superbug, you
Mhm.
died because it was 100% antibiotic resistant.
Oh my gosh.
His wife, another client of mine, in fact, she was first. She was an epidemiologist, and
Mhm.
her husband was in a coma, dying from this illness, this superbug.
Mhm.
And I told her she could find a cure, and she would. And I created for me a mental link with Tom,
Yeah.
and I was in his head, or he was in my head 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for over 8 months when he was unconscious and in a coma. Now, a psychic, me, I helped find the cure to it, but this psychic, or a good psychic that had the opportunity, uh, um, Tom would have died if a psychic hadn't have been involved. Uh,
Right.
he was at a point where he this is a really long story, and I'm doing the Coles Note version of it. I visualized a candle, a lit candle, that when the flame was strong, I knew Tom was okay.
Okay.
Oh, incidentally, he was in Germany. I was in Toronto. He was
Okay.
in total isolation, and I had a psychic link that I
Right.
wasn't around him physically. And I visualized a candle. When the flame was strong, I knew Tom was okay. And when it started to flicker, I knew there were problems. And there was one point where he was in this coma, um, and that flame started to flicker, and it looked like it was going to go out. He also went into septic shock at that time as well. And I told Stephanie, his wife, that Tom was cold. He didn't know where he was.
Aw.
He was confused. He was sick, in pain, and he could hear people saying that he was going to die, and everybody thought he was. And he was starting to let go.
Aw.
And I said to Stephanie, Tom needs to see his children. Yesterday would have been a good day. Today is a good day.
Yeah.
Tomorrow's not such a good day.
Mm.
If you wait much longer, don't bother. And that night, Tom's daughters flew from Los Angeles to Germany, and I knew everything was okay because all of a sudden, in my mind, later in the night, um, the flame started flashing. It stopped flickering and became strong again, and that was when his daughters showed up. And it's written all about that, or part of it, in a book called The Perfect Predator. And we talked about that. And there were several other things. So if a psychic hadn't have been involved, and there are so many people around that could have done it, I just got the call. There were others that could have. Uh, if a psychic hadn't have been involved, Tom would have died. And I sincerely hope that the younger ones start learning how to do these things so they can keep the energy going.
Now, can you not link with someone?
Pardon?
Like, can you not link with someone? Say, like when I was married, I would link very quickly to my husband's. Like, I would be able to answer questions before they ask and did all that stuff. How can you? I always felt like it was kind of unfair for me to be able to do that for them, but me to be, they couldn't do that for me. I always felt kind of like I was cheating by knowing the questions before they were asked.
No, it's that you're just smarter. That's the reason,
Well, I will just not say anything to keep the peace. But can you do that? Can you not link with someone that way? Like, how do you stop that? Or do you just let it go and you just do it?
Well, I don't know what other people do. I don't know what normal people do. So I really can't answer, except that I can ignore
Okay.
rather than shut off things or energies like that, or I can just turn it off, or not turn it off, just ignore it, or look the other way.
Okay.
And but until recently, when I was working, I worked from morning until night.
Right.
And when I finished, slaving over a hot crystal ball, then I would just, I wouldn't want to do it anymore.
Yeah, you just be mentally exhausted.
That's
It's
right.
exhausting.
Because, well, I did it every day, and
Yeah.
when I left the tea room when I was about 21, I heard that if a young man, when a young man becomes a priest, they make a vow to say a mass every day of their life for as long as they're alive. And I thought, okay, I'm going to be doing this for my life, so I'm going to make a vow. And I made a vow that I would at least do one psychic reading or practice doing psychic readings every day of my life. And I managed to go 30 plus years without missing a day of doing a reading or practicing.
Right.
And one day I realized it had been like, more than 30 years that I had been without missing a day. So I missed a day because I wanted to know what it felt like not to do it. And the next day I went back and started focusing again. And again, it was another 20 years after that before I missed a day. And I last April 6th, I had quadruple bypass open heart surgery on April 6th. And from April 6th to May 15th, I didn't do a psychic reading or practice. And that was the longest time in my life I went without not doing a reading or practicing. Now that, in fact, I didn't miss that many days in my entire career,
Right.
added up, uh, um, except for when I got sick like that. It's the first time I missed it.
And you had said something. I'd heard a little bit of that story, and you had said something about how do you? Oh, I was going to ask you, how do you know the criteria
Of what?
to charge? You said that you knew it was such a good.
Oh,
It
let
was
me tell you, I got a story about that. This was I was starting into the early 1980s, and I was doing half-hour readings, and now I'm a whole lot. I'm slower and I take more time. But in those days, it was still like being at the tea room, but I added time. So I used to do half-hour readings, and in that time, I would do 20 half-hour readings. I would be on tour. I would do 20 half-hour readings every day. And the way it would work is I would do 10 half-hour readings in a row and then take a 1 hour break. And then I would do 10 more in a row. And then I go party all night. And then the next day, do it all over again, And and that would be like one day after the other, after the other, after the other, for days. It was just what I did, and it was, I was very strict and structured then. So if your appointment was at 12 o'clock, it started at noon. At 12:29, your reading was over, and at 12:30, I was doing the next one. And it was like that day in, day out, day in, day out. And again, I partied all night too. And there was one time in Vancouver, I was being interviewed by a reporter from the Vancouver Sun. And she was a very masculine woman,
Mm-hmm.
and she was an angry woman, and she I mean anyway, she was, and she didn't like me. And every time she asked me a question, she got crabbier and crabbier. And there was this one point she said, um, "Do you charge for your readings?" No, she said, "How long are your readings?" And I said, "Well, half an hour, 30 minutes." And she said, "You charge for them, right?" And I said, "Yes." And she said, "How much do you charge?" And I said, $80 a reading." And she said, $80 a reading for a half an hour? How come you charge $80? Like, she was just outraged. How come you charge $80 for a half an hour? And I said, because I can't get 100. And she went ballistic,
That
just
is hilarious.
crazy. And she said, "You're abusing your talent, your gift, and you're gonna lose your gift. And then what are you gonna do? Or you're gonna lose it. What are you gonna do?" And I said to her, "Well, actually, I'll never lose
Never.
my gift. But if I did lose my gift, there would be no point to my existence."
Right. It's funny you say that. I think they put me on some kind of medicine a long time ago. I don't remember what it was, but that was the only time that I didn't hear the spirit chatter and didn't have the vibrations bouncing off everything and all that. And I have never been hopeless in my life. But that was as close to hopeless as I could imagine, for the whole world to be silent but loud.
Yeah.
I just couldn't imagine, like, to lose the abilities. It's like you said, I can't even imagine wanting to be around
Sure.
with the world so loud but so quiet at the same time. Like,
There was a period, probably the worst time in my career, internally, and I stopped believing what I was saying. I stopped believing that I was psychic. And when I'm doing readings, even way back then, I can be thinking of one thing and saying another, or saying something and thinking a couple of different things at the same time. For example, when I do a reading now, what I'm saying often isn't what I'm thinking. What I'm saying I've already processed, and I'm thinking about what I'm going to be saying next.
Yeah, I understand that totally.
Then what happens at the same time, that I can also be thinking about what's going to happen to that person in 10 years from now. And then at the same time, I can be thinking about what happened to them 3 years ago.
Oh, wow.
And then I can be thinking at the same time what I'm going to have for lunch after I finish the reading. And all of that is happening at the same time.
Wow.
And other techniques that this after like 50 years of doing it. So,
Right.
I know. Now what I often will do is all that. And then if I come across something about what someone's going through, I'll look forward into the future, say like when they're 80, and I will describe to them when I'm doing a reading and it's 35 or 40.
Right.
I'll describe to them what they think about the way they've solved the issue and problems that they're going through right now.
Mm-hmm.
But I look into the future when they're at a certain age, and I look back through their eyes at the way they feel, about how they've solved the problem that they're going through. And that's another technique that I use. But
Wow.
it's just getting used to doing it over and over and over is really what it is.
That is just crazy fascinating. Like I was with you for the first 2 or 3, but then when you started getting into the sandwiches, and then 3 years back, you kind of lost me. I can't go 8 years yet. I can maybe go like a year and a half, but I can't. I still can't. I get
Well,
so.
do you know what? The only reason that you can't is that you say you can't.
Okay.
And as soon as you stop saying that you can't and that you can, you will.
I get in so much trouble for that. I'm always in trouble for that. They're like, why do you do that? Why won't you let all your abilities out? Why do you hold them back? I think it's just fear and lack of confidence is all it is. I mean, I know what it is. I'm just trying to learn
We
how
have
to.
to have a talk, Michelle.
Sir? I
I
didn't hear
said
you.
we have to have a talk sometime soon.
I actually friended you on Facebook.
I
Like,
know,
while
I saw that. Well, I noticed you did this afternoon. I think I think I accepted back. I didn't realize that you were going to be on the
hi.
show. Well, yeah, that was a surprise.
Yeah, so it's good. Michael, we've just totally abandoned you. Do you have
Just
any
come and
questions?
join us, Michael.
Come on, it's warm in here.
Yeah, you kind of just took the show, Michelle.
Well, you can pop in anytime you wanted.
But unfortunately, with the time, we're at our hour. But where can people find you, Robert?
Well, you can find me in a lot of places. My website is www.robertlindsymilne.com. You can find me on YouTube, Instagram, iheart, um, Apple, Spotify, paranormal, YouTube, paranormal, UK paranormal. And I also have my own podcast called My Side of the Crystal Ball. And that's all the places. Now, there's more, but there's just so many.
It's not hard to find him. I found him pretty quick.
Yeah.
But
And I love to hear from people. Even if you don't have a reading, I love it when people just say hello, or I like that a lot.
absolutely. Well, I'll certainly be reaching out to you. I just really enjoyed. I can't finish that podcast I was on, but it's good to talk to you, and thanks for Michael for just letting us roll with it.
Sorry, I took over your show. First, I show up
I'm not
late, and then me and Michelle just ignore you for the rest of the night. I'm so sorry about that, man.
It's all right. I had quite a few questions lined up, but we'll have to save them for another episode.
I promise you I won't be late this time or have the technical problems.
Well, I was glad I was able to help you fix those while we were doing our stuff.
Well, thank you.
But
Thank you, Robert. I appreciate it.
yep, thank you to the chat room, and we will definitely be in touch to have you on again, because I feel like we were just on the tip of the iceberg of everything that's you, and there's so much more that I'd like to get into.
Thank you.
So
I'll make it up to you, I promise.
oh, you're fine. It wasn't your fault. Things happen.
Okay.
But yep, we will definitely be in touch. Probably February 2024 is when I'm booking next show. So
Okay.
I sent you a friend request so we can talk.
Okay.
Schedule
on Facebook, you did?
on Facebook.
Okay.
I found it while we were trying to fix your technical issue, so that's when I sent the request.
Yes. Then you got to see my dog Tessa. She's 15 years. Yeah, 15 years old.
Oh wow, she's getting to go around really well for 15 years old.
She is.
Yeah.
Well, if you are we saying good night, or are we just sort of?
Hey, Michael.
Yeah, we're saying good night, and we will definitely have you back on. And thank you for coming on and sharing everything that you shared with us.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right. Bye, everybody. Thanks for tuning in.
Bye-bye, everyone.
You have just listened to The Energy That Surrounds Us with your host, Michael Kopf. Be sure to tune in next week for our next episode.